Yeah, well, let's dig in. Hello, everybody. I'm David Cooks, and I tell you what, we know that paralysis can take on many forms. It can be physical like mine, or it can be psychological. You put your mind to. And what we try to do is feature stories that go from difficult places to fulfilling purpose. What seems impossible can be done by you. He is currently the executive director of the Center for Christian Leadership at Wisconsin Lutheran College. It may knock you down, but don't let it stop you. He's also had a journey that I think we'll find intriguing that fits right into Paralysis to Purpose to Podcast. Got so much to give, a lot of life to live. You must go from paralysis to purpose. Get your pen and paper out. Yeah, I'm taking notes. Paralysis to purpose. Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Paralysis to Purpose to Podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, and thank you once again for joining us. Make sure you take a moment to like, share, and subscribe to our podcast. You know, I say this every time. I love what I do because I get to speak with some of the most intriguing and inspiring people on the planet, and today is no exception. For those of you who know me on a personal level, as much as I've loved coaching basketball and doing some of the things I do, what I really love is fishing. And today, I've got a professional fisherman on, a walleye fisherman at that. That's just one piece of his life. So we're going to get a chance to talk about that some today. He is currently the executive director of the Center for Christian Leadership at Wisconsin Lutheran College, which provides teaching, experience, mentorship that develop Christian servant leaders who will positively impact their home, business, community, and church. Prior to doing that, he spent a number of years in Christian private education as a teacher, a principal, a consultant. He's always had his hand in education and serving and helping other people. He's also had a journey that I think we'll find intriguing that, fits right into Paralysis to Purpose to Podcast. So Jeremy Bock is our guest today. And I'm so excited to have him on the podcast. Jeremy, welcome to Paralysis to Purpose to Podcast.
Well, I really appreciate the opportunity to spend some time with you today. It's a real honor to be here.
Well, let's talk about childhood a little bit. I know you were an athlete coming up. Tell us a little bit more about your family and your upbringing and where you're from.
I grew up in a very small town west of Hartford called Hughesford. About 900 people, farming community, small local high school there, went to Christian grade school, played basketball. And when it came time to high school, I was in a town where everybody went to the local high school. But there was a school in Watertown called Northwestern Preparatory School. And the purpose of the school is training future teachers and pastors on our Lutheran church body. And all I knew about the school is we played a basketball tournament there every year. And they had a big gym, much bigger than the one I played in. And shortly after my senior year, when we played there, I got a letter from their basketball coach, Paul Bertolis. And he said, hey, I'd like to talk to you and see if you'd be interested in coming here. I think you'd be a fit. Keep an open mind to the teaching ministry. And I remember we went there, we toured, and my parents left it up to me. You know, I think at that age, at age 14, you're too young to be making that decision. I think you can involve kids in that, but I think it's still the parents' decision. But they left it up to me. And I woke up one day and I just felt like I'm going to go to Northwestern Prep.
Before you go on, I want our listeners to know some of these towns that you talked about. We're in Wisconsin, and he's from Wisconsin. So these are some small towns in Wisconsin that he's referring to, so that, give you a context of some of the decision making that he had to go through. And he talked about this gym being a bigger gym and everything, because where he had come from, it was pretty small.
Yeah, we're talking, my hometown was 900 people. Northwestern Prep School is in Watertown, about 11 miles away, about 25,000 maybe in the community. Not huge, but much bigger. And when that decision was made, my parents talked to me and said, you need to go tell Coach Cowell, the Hughesford coach. That's the right thing to do. And that was a hard thing. I'm 14 years old telling him I'm not coming here. And it's not like I was going to be the savior to Hughesford basketball. That's not it. It was just this culture that's kind of what you did. And I kind of broke away from that. And I think it was just, I truly believe it was just God kind of working through basketball and Coach Bertolis to bring me to that campus.
Let's talk about that just a little bit, because like you said, you're 14 years old and your parents leave this decision up to you, which I think is very interesting. You were in a small town where everybody knew everyone, everybody knew what was expected of them,
Yes.
but you bucked that. You went against that. How difficult was that decision?
It was hard because my friends were there, my parents' friends were there, their kids were there. I mean, you go down to the bank, everybody knows you. You go to here, everybody knows you, and everybody knows what you're doing. And I didn't know much about prep, but I knew they had a good basketball team because they played Houstonford in non-conference games every year. And I had seen them play. And for me, I was just looking at it for purely basketball. I wasn't considering the Christian school part. I knew about that. I saw this was my ticket to a college scholarship. That's what I was thinking. And I thought that's going to give me a better opportunity than Houstonford High School is.
Wow.
And I'll tell you what, so much more came out of it, and it wasn't a college scholarship.
You had the same dream that so many other kids have.
Correct.
To get a college scholarship. And whether that's a kid from a big city and a kid from an urban community, a kid from a suburban community, a lot of times those dreams are the same. And we don't sometimes get that. What was your experience like? And we'll get to your senior year.
A little bit different because they're training you to be a pastor. All of us at the time were going through a pastor track. So my studies were kind of set for me. I had to take 4 years of Latin, 2 years of German, and those were tough. Those were tough classes. I mean, I had to study my tail off to get sometimes, a B minus in Latin, but I didn't know anybody. And my freshman year, what was most ironic is our very first basketball game was against Houstonford, my hometown. And there's a lot there, like you want to prove everybody wrong because I heard so many things. You're not going to be successful. It's not going to work well. It's not going to do that. And I went out in that game and I was on the JV team and we won and I played okay. But midway through my freshman year, we had some injuries on the varsity and they pulled me up to varsity. And that was hard because you're a freshman. You've got some seniors on the varsity who think they should be playing, and here's a freshman up there playing in their position. And so it wasn't the easiest thing, but I felt it made me stronger, not so much as a player, but it made me really learn how to handle some adversity and tough relationships and teammates. The sophomore year, too, I stayed on the varsity team, and we had a successful season, but we had too many individuals. We had too many people who were about themselves. And it was between my sophomore and junior year that we made a big shift. And I'll never forget this. Coach Bertolis switched our entire man-to-man defense. And we went to Dick Bennett's on the line, up the line. We're going to force them to the middle, to the baseline. It was just, we're like, what? And he's like, trust me. And we had film session. And that was a big piece, as well as we had a team where top to bottom, number 1 through number 15, it didn't matter. Our second five could have started for us as well. We were very talented, but there was no egos. It didn't matter who scored. It didn't matter who got the steals. And that season we went 25-0. We didn't lose a game. It was just an incredible ride. And we rode that all the way into the senior year. And which I had a little bump in the road my senior year health-wise.
I want to go back a little bit and talk about the difference between your sophomore and junior year, because you did not overhaul the entire team. But clearly there was a mental shift in terms of the culture of the team. How did that come about? How did all of a sudden you go from a team that had egos and individuals to a team that was selfless and no one really cared about their individual goals? Only thing they seemed to care about was winning. And you guys did that 25 times out of 25 times.
Yeah, in my sophomore year, we were 19-3. I think some people would say you should be happy. We were frustrated. We did not overhaul the whole team, but there were some changes and some graduation and some players moved on. And the ones that were there just fully bought into team first mentality. Everybody was in. And that doesn't mean, Coach Bertolis was one of the hardest people on you. He would challenge you like you wouldn't believe. But he loved you as a player first. It wasn't about basketball. He was driving you to be your best. And we had a group of people that bought into that because he knew he had the best interest of every single player on that team. And it was a phenomenal year. And you learn, and you know this, David, it was so much more than just basketball. But when you have a practice player who's number 14 knows my job is to prep these guys for this game this week, and I know that's my role and I accept it and I cherish that, it's something special.
So being the best in your role is really important in terms of team success. And that's whether in athletics or in the business world or whatever. So be an All-American in your role. You learned early on the difference between maximizing your abilities and just winning. Because 19-3 was great, but you left a lot on the table.
Yeah.
It sounds like that team had the potential, if it had the right mindset, to also be 25-0. So now you get to your senior year. So you're 25-0. I'm assuming that's a state championship of some sort.
Yeah, we did. We won the state championship that year.
As a junior. And you come back now, it's a senior year. You're still thinking about playing college basketball. We're going to get to the academic side of what you were doing too as well, because I know that you didn't know anything about being a pastor or anything when you got there.
I was not open to it. I knew about it, but I'm like, that's not going to be me. Senior year basketball started, and again, a challenge. I just always felt we could win every game. That we still had an awesome, talented group, and that's the goal. We're out there to win, and we did. And we started out, we won. This was up to January. I think at the time we had 40 straight wins, and every week got tougher because the target on your back gets bigger. Everybody wants to knock you off. And we were at a Super Bowl party. I wasn't feeling well that night. I left early, drove back home. I got sick a few times on the way home. I had to pull over. And I got home, my parents are like, well, why are you home already? And I said, I don't feel good. And they were just like, boy, you must really not be feeling well to leave all your friends. I went and laid down in my bed. And it was at that point that as soon as I laid down, I was paralyzed from my neck down. I couldn't move my arms, couldn't move my legs, couldn't feel anything. It was like you could flip a switch. It happened that fast. And I have one younger sister. Her name is Trisha. And I asked her to come in. I said, can you come in here? And she's like, what do you need? I said, she thinks I'm faking. I said, I can't move my arms or my legs. And she goes, yeah, right. I said, can you just go get mom? And I could hear her say, now he says he can't move his arms and his legs. My mom came in and she said, what's going on? I said, I don't have any feeling. And she grabbed my foot. She goes, do you feel this? No. Grab my arm. No. And so, we're in a small town of 900 people. They called the local EMS. They came, and then they called Juneau, which is a small town away that had an ambulance, and they came, and the paramedics, and they rushed me to Hartford Hospital, about 15 minutes away. And they started doing all these tests. And at the time doing all the tests, my temperature kept rising significantly, 103, 104, 105, 106. And they said, we're going to med flight your son to Freighter. We're not sure that we can save him. We don't know what's wrong. And I said, I'm not leaving this hospital. And I don't remember any of this. I said, I'm not leaving until I see Coach Bertolis. So that tells you the kind of impact, that he had on me. And I remember laying there, and he got there about 2 minutes before we left. I remember seeing his face clear as day. And they wheeled me out to that helicopter, and they flew me to Milwaukee. And so I'm on this helicopter, and I remember talking to the nurse, Sue, because she kept saying her name over and over. At the same time, Coach Bertolis is with my parents driving a freighter, not knowing what they're going to see when they get there. And they ran a bunch of tests. They did some spinal taps. They thought I had spinal meningitis. And all that came back negative. And I woke up the next day in ER with a million wires all over me and a bunch of people who I didn't know who they were. And all they could figure out was there was a virus that overtook my central nervous system. And it changed many things for me. Changed my perspective. It changed my physical activity for a while. It changed my perspective on school, on life, kind of on everything.
When you begin to talk about that, for the listeners who've heard my story, I had something very similar, not feeling well, a little back pain, came home, laid down. I went to get up, needed some help getting out of the bed, could barely walk. I had a blood vessel erupt on my spinal cord. And like you said, it was like just like that.
Mm-hmm.
It was like you flipped the script. I remember, like you, I was like, I don't know what's going on, but we're going to be fine. But let's just get this, I got other things I want to do. I want you to talk a little bit about what that felt like, that helicopter ride, the fact that you weren't sure and they weren't sure. When the doctor says, we don't know if we can save him. We don't know if there's anything else we can do. I've been in that situation. I know what that meant and sounded like to me in recent times. What was that like for you psychologically, mentally?
My temperature was so high. It was just over 107. And I was so out of it. I don't really remember much of anything. I think it was obviously much more traumatic for my parents. For me, I was in and out of consciousness, not knowing what's going on. But I know the stressor that it was for my parents. And I don't think any parent would want to hear that about their son or their daughter from a doctor. But I don't remember, much of anything about that night other than the nurse seeing Coach Bertolus before I left and waking up in ER and the spinal tap because they didn't have time to freeze my back. And I do remember that because it hurt.
Yeah, if you didn't get anesthesia for that, that does not feel good. I often wonder what it was like for my parents as well to see their son in that situation. And we're a faith-driven family, so we believe that God is a healer, has his best for us in mind. But I often wondered as I look back, as I wrote my book and thought about all the things I had experienced being a wheelchair user, how they kept it together. That had to be difficult. Does your parents ever talk about that?
Once in a while it comes up. I was blessed to be raised in a strong Christian home. At that time that happened, shortly after, we were I believe, Channel 4 Team of the Week. And the Milwaukee Journal did an article about me at that time. I believe the title was After a Scare, Bock is Back, if I remember the title. But in there, my mom and my mom and dad and the Coach Bertolus talked about how hard and continuous they prayed from Hartford all the way down to Milwaukee on that drive. And my mom just always still said that she feels she had this inner peace knowing that, that wasn't going to be the end. She just felt that, God's got something more planned for him. And I don't believe this is it. She's talked about that numerous times. She couldn't explain it. She just said, even though how scary it was, I still had this peace.
This is a great place to take a quick break. When we come back, we want to pick it up from here, talk about your recovery, talk about your next steps. And then you had a conversion of sorts in the midst of all of this that is going on. And we're going to talk about that when we get back. We'll be right back on Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, after this short break.
We hope you're enjoying Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok at Paralysis to Purpose for more updates. Also, check out David's website at davidcookspeaks.com to learn more about his mission and purchase his book, Getting Undressed, From Paralysis to Purpose.
Welcome back to Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast. I'm your host, David Cooks, with our guest, Jeremy Bock. We're going to pick it up where we left off. Right before the break, you were now in ER and waking up and not sure where you are, but you do remember talking about your team was the Team of the Week on Channel 4 here in the city, and there was an article written about you about a scare but a comeback. Let's talk about the comeback and and how that happened.
Well, I was in the hospital for a week. I lost 25 pounds. I remember my team coming to visit me. Yes, we were the Team of the Week. I think I was on Channel 4 because I remember pulling all the nurses in. I'm like, you got to come in and watch. We're going to be on TV. And so we had this whole watch party with every nurse I could corral into the room, and people came and visited, and they thought for sure that I have some sort of brain damage with my temperature reading that high. And they ran this test. We've never seen this. Everything looks fine. Everything looks normal. And I was discharged a week later. I had some home health care because they really had to pump a lot of IVs and things in me to get my fluid levels back. And I was allowed to go back to school part-time the first week. I remember going back to school, but I didn't go to practice. I just getting back to school the first week, took everything I had. The second week, I went to practice and I traveled with the team and sat on the bench, and it was killing me. During this time, we still kept winning. And I was anxious, and I'm like, I'm going to will myself back on that court. I don't care. I know I'm going to be underweight, but I'm going to get back out there. And it was week 3 from the time I'd been discharged. And I remember running a gopher on the first gopher to start practice, and I felt like I just run 10 of them. I did not have the stamina, worked my way back. And I think it was about 3.5 weeks since when I got home is when I was back in the starting lineup. It was our Lutheran Invitational tournament. I remember hitting a jump shot from the corner. And I remember Coach Bertolis telling, I didn't know it at the time, but he said, he's back. He can do that move. We got him back. He may be a little lighter, might be able to get pushed around, but he's back. And we went on. We made it all the way to the state championship game. So we were rolling 49 straight wins, one more to make it 50, 2 perfect seasons. And we did not play well. We were down by 11 to start the fourth quarter. We made it all the way back. We were down by 1 with 8 seconds left. And we had a shot. We had a guy who was 6'10" in high school. And I'll never forget it. Reggie, we got him the ball inside. I was option 2, another guy option 3. Probably could have dunked it. I think he was so surprised he was open. He turned, the ball rolled in around the rim, and it came out. And we lost by 1. And he was not the reason we lost. We just did not play well. Too many turnovers that game. Mm-hmm. But it was hard. I hadn't lost a game in almost 2 years.
When you're used to winning, and then you lose, it's almost like a grieving. It's a really weird feeling for those who haven't been involved in athletics. And all of a sudden you lost, and you're not even sure how to respond to that and what that means. What did that loss mean to you?
I focused on myself first. If I wasn't underweight, I got pushed around. I was not the same as I was before. If I only would have got this deal. And then you started running through every play of the game. And I don't know, I can remember those things plain as today. My wife gets mad at me sometimes because I can't remember some of what her say the more important things, but I can go back and name this play and where the pass was in the corner and whose fingertips it was off. And I just kept running things through for quite a while. It just took some time.
You hadn't finished high school yet. Were you able to get a scholarship at all for college? Was that on the table anymore after you got hurt?
I started visiting schools, and I played in I think it was the Easter Seals All-Star Classic. I was in that, and I had schools looking at me, Division II, Division III, a little bit of look from some Division I's, not many, and none of them really seemed right, even though we had made several visits. And there was my high school coach came to me and said, Jeremy, what are you going to do next year? And I said, I'm not sure. He goes, you need to go be a teacher. And I said, Coach. Because our teacher training college is in New Ulm, Minnesota. It's a small town. And when I visited there my junior year, I said, there's no way I'm going up there. It's just not going to happen. I'm going to play college basketball someplace. And he said, you have the gifts. You got to just give it a try. And I said, are you serious, Coach? Yep. So that's what I did. I went up there, and it wasn't easy. I didn't like it my freshman year. I remember I wrote my parents a letter and said, I don't like it here. I think I'm going to leave. My mom called me. She goes, what's going on? Where are you going to go? I said, I don't know. So I stayed. I didn't know what I wanted to do, but it was just hard. I played basketball there. That wasn't the primary focus of the school. Not that it had to be, but not everybody had the same approach to the game, the same work ethic. That was hard for me. Like, we're not going to win if we're not putting the right work into it. And I just came off a program. I know what that takes, and I don't see that. So it was hard. It was a hard transition, but it just something kept me there because I didn't know what else there was.
I want to talk to you about the importance of your high school coach to you.
Sure.
You were at death's door, and the person you wanted to see was your coach.
Mm-hmm.
That's who you asked for. And now your high school career has ended, and your coach says to you, I think you should be a teacher. And you're like, whatever, I'm not doing that. But he saw some things in you. He saw things in you that you could not see.
Yeah, I think it's extremely important. I always say everybody should have their own POB, personal board of directors. People that really know you, that care about you, that are willing to tell you things that maybe you don't even want to hear, but that you need to hear them. And I've said this all along. Was Coach Bertolis he was committed. He wanted to win just as badly as I did. And basketball was there, but that was not the end. It was developing us as young men, making sure we're growing in our faith, understanding teamwork and unity and work ethic, all things that would carry us through our life. I don't care what it is, what you're doing, and I don't care what age. I think you always need people who are mentors in your life. I have today. I'm 50 years old. I've got 3 people that I can go to that are my mentors. I still need that. We all need that. It's critical because we're not meant to do this thing called life alone. And you need those people that care for you, that are willing to have those hard conversations that can just continue to help you move forward.
Your basketball career came to an end.
Mine came to an end in kind of an ironic way. It was my freshman year at college. It was a year to the date that I had gotten sick in high school, and I took a charge and I went to get up off the floor, and you're not going to believe it, I couldn't move my legs. I could not move my legs. And I'm like, no, here we go again. And I could not move my legs for 2 days. My disc had swollen so much it cut off the circulation of my spinal cord. I spent 10 days for the Institute for Low Back Care in Minneapolis. I came back and played my sophomore year and junior year, and there was some opportunities. There was a group that I was talking to go play in Europe after college, a small league over there. And I really wanted to do that. And my senior year, I reached for a ball and I couldn't stand up. Went back to the Institute for Low Back Care. They put me on all this medication, and I was doing everything I could to try to keep playing. And it was affecting my health. I was getting the shakes. And my parents found out because they got the insurance bill. I didn't tell them. And they said, what's going on? And I told them. And my now wife, who I was just starting to date, said, you got to hang this up. And then Coach Bertolis called me and he's like, there's more to life, Jer. Basketball's not your identity. And I think for so long growing up, that's what I thought my identity was. People knew me as, oh, Jeremy Bock, the basketball player. I want to continue that. I had such a narrow focus on my life, thinking it was just all about basketball. And obviously it wasn't. And for some reason, God just chose to use those things to open my mind. When I got sick senior year, I was at a Christian school. Faith was not in my top 10. I took all that for granted, and that opened my eyes, my perspective to a much bigger thing. Got me to college. I think it opened my mind to listen to Coach Bertolis, to go be a teacher, even though I didn't want to do it. I get up there. Basketball's not the same. It carries me through, but here's this kind of a turning point. And it was hard. I remember walking into Coach Buck's office my senior year of college and said, I can't do it anymore. And I think you needed 2 mops to mop up the tears on the floor, because I thought, to me, I didn't know what was next. What am I going to do every day? I spend 3-4 hours a day in this game. What am I going to do? And that's why for me it was so hard.
We always talk about having a plan B, but when you're really engrossed in something that you really believe in and you put everything you have in that, you don't even think a plan B is necessary, because this is the plan that's going to work. Right. And you have no reason to think otherwise. But along the way, like you said, you were at this Christian school and you had now gone to another school that you're not going to be a pastor now, but you're going to be a teacher. And so basketball was actually preparing you for what you were going to do and not the other way around. But you didn't know that at the time. That was the tool, the instrument that was going to put you in a position to do what you were really called to do in life. And that is serve others through education. You ended up graduating from college, and then you started down the path of teaching and building schools and all that kind of stuff. Once you started to go down your path, it was no looking back. As much as you resisted it up front, your coach was right. Let's talk about post-college, post-basketball, and this new world of teaching and education that became your real love.
Yeah, it's when we graduate, now it's called Martin Luther College. When you graduate from there, you don't get to pick your first school. You go there. If you're going to be a teacher, you have to be, you're going to get assigned. So we have 300 some schools across the country. I don't know, 18, 24 high schools, and you could go anywhere. And so they read off your name. It's kind of like the NFL draft. Here's your name and where you're going. except you don't get an immediate phone call from the church, you know. And I was assigned back to the high school that I had graduated from 4 years earlier. We had another small school in Prairie du Chien, and we were going to move that school over to Watertown campus, and it was to become Luther Preparatory School, one big high school. And my job was to live in the dorm. These kids are in the dorm from all over. When I went there, I was 10 miles away. I commuted. And I'll tell you, you know, when you live in the dorm, we were with these people all the time. I always felt I missed out on a little bit, but I had kids at my house all the time growing up. But now I'm in the dorm. You're kind of the parent for them. You're their parent away from home. I taught some classes, took kids to doctor appointments, airport runs, coached. And that's only a 2-year assignment. My girlfriend, my senior year, then became my fiance. She got assigned to Clearwater, Florida. So I'm in Watertown. She was in Clearwater, Florida. We spent the year apart, planned our wedding, got married, and then we spent our first year of marriage living in the dorm. And we had 55 boys on our floor. I said the quickest way to have 55 kids. It was a good experience for us to live there. I think they could see our relationship. We could pour into those kids, and she taught at the school too and did some coaching. And I was still in the hands of the assignment committee because that was only a 2-year assignment. And typically you're at a school 3 years, and then, you know, you could get an opportunity to go to a different school. And then I got assigned down to Clearwater, Texas, Houston, Texas, south of Houston in Friendswood, right between Houston and Galveston. And I was teaching grades 4 through 8, all subjects, small school. I was the principal. She had kindergarten. My wife had kindergarten. We had 2 other teachers. The school was not in the best shape. We had like 25 kids when we got there, but you go from coaching in high school basketball. And I got there, and I'll never forget this. This boy's name was James. He goes, "Man, I really love basketball, Mr. Bock." He goes, "I heard you do too." And I go, "Well, what do you know, James? What do you tell me about the game?" He goes, "I know if you shoot here, you get like 1 point, kind of here 3, and out here, I think it's 4 or 5. And I thought, Lord, what have you done? What are you doing? You put me here? Like, I just came from coaching assistant JV down to, or assistant varsity to this. But it was a great experience for us. We turned the school around, and it just started this journey. I always approached each school, no matter what the condition opportunity was, is we're going to win. You know, basketball, like, we're going to find a way, we're going to make it successful. And that's what we're going to do here with the schools. I was never looking like, I'm going to do this so I can move to this next one. If we do things right, there's going to be doors that God opens for us to do. Mm-hmm. And that's kind of what started this journey. When I left Friendswood, Texas, after only 3 years, I went to Middleton, northwest side of Madison. Church wanted to start a new school from scratch. And they asked me to come do it. And they're like, "We're going to build a brand new campus, and we want you to do it." And I thought, I didn't take a class on this. There's no classes in college how to start a school. But they were a thriving church, committed to their faith. And I thought, if they're willing to do this, there's something working there, and I can learn. And ended up starting a brand new, had a year of development. And when you start something from scratch, there's just a ton of work. But we put a lot of people with a lot of gifts. You don't do it all. The people that were strong in technology, they're on the technology team. People that love food, they helped us create our foods program, our lunch program. People that wanted to, about fitness, they helped create the playground stuff. And you just managed all these work groups. It wasn't about me. Marketing, I didn't know anything about marketing. How do you market it? A school? Well, we had 10 people who did marketing for a living. So I had the message, but they could tell me how to get it out. And it was tough. I mean, it was hard. But that started, I never thought I'd do it once, and let alone did it again, and then almost a third time.
So you started 3, I think it is, schools.
Yeah, I was at Middleton for 2000 to 2006. I went up to Green Bay for 9 years to an existing school that wanted to make it better. We tried starting another new school in the area up there, kind of changed the paradigm of our Lutheran schools. It just wasn't the right time. We raised a lot of money. We raised a lot of awareness. I think the school system is thriving in much better position today when I look back at the work we did. I came down and started a school in Pewaukee, not far from here. called the Christian Education Leadership Academy. I was there for a year, and then the opportunity came to really unique to come over here to Wisconsin Lutheran College and start or lead the Center for Christian Leadership, which was a relatively new initiative here at the college.
What would you say from your basketball experience translated the most or helped you most in these new areas of work that you got into?
I'd say relationships are number one. You can't do it alone. You can't go and win a basketball game by yourself. I mean, people would say, "Oh yeah, well, you hit the key winning." I don't care. It takes the 5 people on the court, and I don't care what position you're in. You can't. If you're going to be strong, you got to do it with a team. And so, understanding the team dynamics, how to help people maximize their gifts, allow them to do things in their wheelhouse and give them freedom. I learned all that from Coach Bertolis. Integrity, doing things the right way. You can recover from I remember, I think Mike Krzyzewski, and Mike, Coach K. I'm pretty sure he said this. Anyone can recover from a bad shot or a bad game, but it takes so much longer to recover from a lapse of integrity.
Yeah,
your word is everything. You say something, you follow through, you do it. And I think just always doing things with honesty, integrity. And that was only Coach Bertolis. That was my parents too. I made some mistakes over the time, and we all do. And they held me accountable. It wasn't just handed out. And that work ethic that I learned from my parents, from Coach Bertolis in basketball, what you put in is what you're going to get out, but you got to do it with people around you as well.
So what do you actually do now as the executive director for the Center of Christian Leadership at Wisconsin Lutheran College?
Wisconsin Lutheran College, this year is our 50th year, providing secondary higher ed Christian education. We have 38 majors. You can come here and be a doctor, you can be a lawyer, you can be a teacher, be a nurse. But our mission is to create and develop Christian leaders. And the college kind of asked the question, well, are we really being intentional? That's in our mission, but are we really being intentional? And so they had this idea when I came. It was just kind of on a napkin. President Johnson said, this is kind of what we're thinking, but we want you to direct it. And we just saw it as this hub, that there's this intersection that the center can have with careers and interns, with the faculty and staff, with developing leaders. And it's amazing what's happened. I came here in 2016, so it's been 7 years. And kind of the key components, we have an undergrad leadership program called the Christian Leadership Program, where students get a mentor, they get a leadership coach, they do 30 hours of leadership learning, 60 hours of service. They have to do a couple initiatives, one on their own, they compete in a team competition, because today everything is collaboration. You don't do things in isolation. Mm-hmm. So they compete in the Serve to Lead Impact Challenge, kind of like Shark Tank, except they're designing plans to impact the community. So it doesn't matter your major, but you can go through this 3-year program and get certified in Christian leadership. And so you come out, you have your degree, but you've also had all these hands-on experiences. And so that's one thing under the Center for Christian Leadership. I teach a leadership class. I do a monthly lunch and learn, faculty and staff. I coordinate 2 formal leadership trainings for faculty and staff a year. We're a Gallup Clifton Strengths campus. So the Center for Christian Leadership, we've always been that. We've kind of taken it to the next level now. We've been asked to do that. So all our students here take strengths when they come in. They get some coaching, and we're kind of building a 4-year kind of roadmap for them to walk through. We've managed the leadership scholarships here on campus. Anything leadership is under my direction, and just how can we develop people who are just uber confident in who God's made them to be, so they go out and can make a difference within their sphere of influence. So if I get a job as a nurse at Freighter, that's my sphere of influence. How can I make a difference in those people's lives? If I'm going to be a doctor down here, I'm going to be a teacher in this school, we can make a difference one student at a time. And it's really unique. Not many colleges have it. And I feel very blessed to do it. And I feel like I can use all the experiences I had of basketball, of learning to be, we talked about it earlier, the health scare, I have chronic back pain. I've had 6 back surgeries. I live with it every day. All of those experiences, starting schools, I can take all of that, working with donors. I can use all of that now to help guide this Center for Christian Leadership, which I think now with what's going on in our world, strong, ethical, moral Christian leaders are needed more than ever before. And
Wow.
We're pumping them out one at a time with God's blessing.
The scripture declares that everything works for the good to those who love God and are called according to his purpose.
Mm-hmm.
And so you've had all these things happen along the way, and you didn't understand they were all ingredients to your cake.
Some of those positions I had when I got to Houston, I wasn't sure I wanted to keep doing it. The first year was so hard. I remember talking about maybe I should just hang it up and do something else. That happened several times. God always saw me through. One of my favorite patches, Jeremiah 29:11, for I know the plans I have for you, declares the Lord. Plans to prosper you and not to harm you. Sometimes you're like, is this really part of that? Isn't there another way you can do this? I look back and the toughest times, the toughest positions, even in things that maybe didn't work out, I was so much stronger on the other side because of, you don't see it at the time. When you look back, you go, oh yeah, now I understand. But you don't always see it at the time.
Wow.
And I'm thankful for that. I would not be as appreciative now. And I worked with some tough people. I report here directly to President Johnson. He's one of the most humble servant leaders. He can challenge me. He will challenge me. He will, hey, I think you need to rethink this. But in the end, he's got your back. And I've said often, I don't know that I'd appreciate what I have now if I would have had it 10, 15 years ago. My back, I have to exercise. I have to take care of it. I've got to do that. And he was the first person when I came here, he said, I know about your back. We talked about it. He said, I'm going to hold you accountable. You are only as good to us and others as you are to yourself. And I'm going to make sure that you're following the things you need to do. And in 20 some years, when I came here, he was the first person that ever did that for me.
That's fantastic. Now, we don't have a lot of time left, but we're not getting off this podcast without
we got to talk about fishing.
But also, I didn't get a chance to talk to you about your family. You've got 5 kids and a wife, and just spend a little bit of time talking about the importance to you of being a father and a husband.
I married my wife, Melissa. She went to our rival. She went to Lakeside Lutheran. She couldn't stand me when I was in high school because of basketball. And we met in college, and I'll tell you, she's been a rock. She's been a rock star. I'm blessed to be married to her. We just celebrated 27 years of marriage. We have 5 kids, age 25 down to 9. First 3 are girls. Last 2 are boys. Never would have dreamt that. I think parenting is the single most toughest thing that is out there. It is tough, but it's one of the most rewarding things too. And I'm proud of all my kids. We've got 2 through college. One's a business marketing major. One just graduated here as a nurse over at Freighter. Got another one coming into here. WLC gonna be a nurse coming in this year. And then who knows about the boys? They're in 7th and 4th grade, but they're involved in sports and everything outdoors, and they love to fish too.
Let's talk about fishing before we leave, because when we were talking initially, just in general about a few other things, and fishing came up. How did you get involved in fishing and then become like a professional fisherman?
I grew up in Houston. That's where the Rock River is.
Mm-hmm.
And we lived right across the street from the Rock River. And my dad was a hunter, liked hunting, took me hunting. Wasn't really into fishing, but he bought me a fishing pole and he'd take me across the street. And that's when I first got into fishing. My good friend David Gruckley lived right there in the river, and we'd fish walleyes, and that's what we do. I kept with it. My dad, like I said, was never really into fishing. And my brother-in-law, Mark Bartels, is into fishing. And my wife's cousins are. And they said, you should kind of try the walleyes. They'll just try a small tournament. And I'm like, I don't know. That sounds kind of crazy, but yeah, you should try it. They encouraged us to get into it. We did a few tournaments together, and then we just kept it going. And my brother-in-law has been my teammate for partner tournaments for the last 14 years. And he had the boat, and I always did the sponsor, the business side. And then I was blessed a couple of years ago. It was just a God thing. Went to a seminar at Cabela's. The guy who was going to lead the seminar wasn't there because of COVID. And they said, we're just going to have a discussion on fishing with everybody in the room. I go there just to learn. I didn't usually tell people I'm a tournament fisherman. My son was with me, Anderson. And when they went around and said, well, how much do you fish? He goes, well, I pre-fish tournaments practice with my dad. Well, that let the cat out of the bag. I wasn't too happy about it because then people don't really share everything because they don't want their secrets out. But the guy in the room, he said, well, you could probably lead this session on your own. And I led a lot of questions and answered a lot of things. We talked afterwards. He turned out to be the pro staff manager for Nitro Boats at the Cabela's Richfield store. Went in next fall, we talked, and they offered me a position on their pro staff. And so I joined the Nitro Boats pro staff and Mercury Marine pro staff 2 years ago. But I've had many other sponsors, non-fishing, that have really been with me in my career that without them, I wouldn't be able to do what I do. It's an expensive hobby, just like anything else. But fishing, there's so many things that you can apply to leadership and life from the lessons that I've learned in fishing and fishing tournaments. I'm a competitive guy, and when I can't play basketball, I cannot run. I can't do that. It hurts too much. So I had to find a way to compete. And I found fishing allowed me to get that competitive side out still in a sport that I can do. And I just like anything, I know a ton more today than I didn't know anything 14 years ago when we started this thing.
That's a great story. So it's also nice, I think, if you can have something outside of work that you enjoy doing to release the stress of all the things that you're involved in. The work that you do is not easy. Because it's people intensive. You've got 5 kids and a wife. You had all of these things going on. Do you ever just go fishing just to have some peace of mind, or do you always have to win the tournament?
No, I don't always have to win the tournament. I fish about 5 to 6 tournaments a year. If you wanted to, you could fish one every weekend. And you got to balance, like you said, you got to balance life. And I still coach some stuff, baseball with my kids and basketball. But you do need, and I don't care what it is, if it's golf, basketball, fishing, something, you need something to just step back. And I wasn't always the best at that, of just stepping back and not competing. But some of the most enjoyable days are where I can just get on the boat. Maybe I take someone along that wants to learn more about the Center for Christian Leadership and what we're doing here at the college. The thing that probably gets me the most joy is I donate some trips every year. I'm involved at Kettle Moraine Lutheran High School, and I donate a trip to their auction, and to take people that have never really fished much before. Or this year in the National Walleye Tour tournament, you get paired with a co-angler. You don't know who they are until the day before. And I was really nervous. I've been in some big moments. I'll tell you what, I was sweating because I didn't want to. It's hard for me. I don't like losing. I don't, as you know, I don't like failing. And probably the most rewarding thing was my co-angler from day 2 said, Jeremy, I've fished these tournaments, these pro co's before. I've hired guides. I learned more from you today than I ever have from any of the other ones. And I'm not the greatest. I'm telling you right now, there are people far better than I am. But I try to do it the right way, to be organized, to be efficient, share what I know. And for him to walk away and say, I feel I'm going to be a better fisherman with my family and the things we're doing from what I took away from you today, that gives me the most joy, because now they're going to feel more confident in what they're doing. So when you can help other people be better, that's what I get the most enjoyment out of. If you win a tournament, that's great too. Trust me, your sponsors love it, but it's super hard to do that. We've come so close. I've had seconds this year. I had a third in the Mercury Marine Nationals out of 287 teams. That is one of the toughest tournaments in the Midwest. And, but it's not always about necessarily the win, because you can learn good things and bad from every single type of experience, every tournament.
The one thing that's clear in what you just said, you talked about helping make other people better. And I think that's a part of everybody's purpose on earth, is to leave the space that you're in, the sphere of influence that you operate in, better than when you got there. Before we go, there are 3 things we always talk about on the road from paralysis to purpose. And that's perspective, perseverance, and partnerships. I'm going to ask you each of those words and just tell me what comes to mind when you think of them. What is the first thing that comes to mind when you hear the word perspective?
Keep an open mind.
What about perseverance?
God will see you through. It's going to be tough, but you trust his plan. He doesn't give you more you can handle or bear. I keep coming back to that passage over and over in my life.
And then partnerships.
Partnerships are everything, whether it be in your family, your friends, your life. Treat people with honesty, integrity, and respect. And you approach things that way. God's going to bless your relationships with people, and you'll be thankful you approached it that way.
Jeremy, it's been great having you on the podcast today. Your story is amazing. You shared a lot of great things with us today. So I want to thank you for being on the podcast.
I just appreciate it. I remember when we got off the phone the last time and you said, hey, I want to have you as a guest. And I remember when home, I told my wife, I'm like, she goes, how's your day? I'm like, you're never going to believe this. We had this great conversation about leadership in life, and David, and he loves to fish, and I do. And it created this whole conversation. I really appreciate the opportunity just to share things. And it's a great thing for me too, to think back through some things. It just always helps you, what you just talked about, keep things in perspective as well.
Keep doing what you're doing, because you're impacting lives and you're actually impacting generations as you do it. Until next time, on Paralysis to Purpose, the podcast, I'm your host, David Cooks, reminding you that your ability to endure is always greater than your willingness to endure.
You can do anything you put your mind to.
Thanks for tuning in to Paralysis to Purpose. Don't forget to follow us on social media at Paralysis to Purpose on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, and TikTok. To purchase his book, visit davidcookspeaks.com. Be sure to tune in next time for more inspiring conversations with David Cooks.
We have a saying on our John Gordon team is that sometimes your job is to be the star of a team, sometimes your job is to support the star, but the team is always the star.
Next time on Paralysis to Purpose.
I'm so excited to have him back on the podcast, Thomas R. Williams.
And so when you come into a situation, you don't always have to do something to be approved. Sometimes you come there and you can listen. Sometimes you come there, you learn. Sometimes you come and serve.
Paralysis to purpose.